Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum this evening. Right now, I'm trying to delay for time because Roger Aylworth from the Chico Enterprise Record has not joined us yet. So hopefully he will join us as our president of the League. Jane Wanderer introduces everybody and also discusses how the forum will be run this evening. Thank you.
I was doing all that.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Want to let you know, 1, turn off your cell phones. 2, you need to know we're being broadcast, I believe, yes, tonight, Channel 11. So you are on television tonight. The League of Women Voters is an organization that started about the same time the women got the right to vote with the 19th Amendment back in 1920. However, we actually started under another name way back in the 1800s, so we've been working at this a long time. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, but we are political. Now, we don't support any candidate and we don't support any party. But we do study issues, and after much thought and consideration, we can take action on those issues if we come to what we call a consensus. One of the things we do that is our educational activity is having forums for candidates and helping people understand the propositions, the many propositions that California seems to have. Other states aren't quite as lucky as we are. So our educational wing devotes those monies and that time to activities like we're having tonight, as well as we have a speakers bureau for the pros and cons. If anyone's interested, we have only 2 issues on the ballot for June, but we have a speakers bureau where people will come out and tell you about Propositions 41 and 42 if you're interested. And I think at one of our subsequent forums, we'll probably have a speaker explain them also in a forum just like this in May. Tonight's forum, we will have 2 different races, the race for the county clerk and recorder, and we have 2 candidates for that office, and we'll start with that one, but I'll tell you about the other one first too. Candace Grubbs and Pamela Teeter are the 2 candidates for that office, and then following that we have 5 candidates for county assessor, and I can't remember all your names right now, but I will once we get all the little signs up there. I'm familiar with a lot of your names because another job I have is what's called Smart Voter County Coordinator. The League of Women Voters Education Fund for the state of California provides a website page for every candidate for free at every election. So when we have a big election, that can be up to 110 candidates in Butte County alone, might be offered the opportunity, if they want, to put their candidacy on our free page. And some of you have already started to do that. I hope the rest of you will. It's pretty easy, isn't it? Yeah? We have one here. So with that, the guidelines for tonight is each speaker will give an opening statement of 2 minutes. We have our timers here, Carolyn Dusenberry and Linda Lunsford, and they have signs that will tell you how much time you have left. When we get to the question and answer period, we will have questions from the audience, questions from the league, and we also have questions from our reporter. We may have 2 reporters. And when you give an answer to one of those questions, each candidate has a minute to answer. And you will also use the timers for that. Around the hall, I think we have a few league members here. We have Jennifer Konya and Linda Furr, and who else? We have Carol Burr here, who is going to be one of the questioners, and Stephanie Gilbert, who is a Chico State student, graduate student, who's an intern with us this semester. And then we have Eleanor Anderson, our Director of Voter Service, who will be the moderator. She's the timer, Linda Lunsford. Okay. I did mention her name, thank you. I didn't say what her job was. She has a stopwatch. We're very accurate about this. So I'll turn over the mic to Eleanor now, if you want to proceed. Sure. And we can have the candidates come up, Mrs. Grubbs and Ms. Teeter. Mrs. Teeter.
While we're waiting for the candidates to take their places, one of the things that I want to emphasize is that civil, respectful behavior is expected at all times. We ask that both candidates and members of the audience help maintain that atmosphere of respect and tolerance. Candidate comments should pertain to the question at hand. And also, there is a no applause rule. I realize some of you are here to support specific individuals, but please save applause until your particular candidate's forum has completely finished. And again, no audio or video recordings of this proceedings may be undertaken without the league's permission. Because we are a nonprofit organization and we operate under those rules, anytime we hold a candidate forum such as this, we may not, none of the audio or video from these events may be used in any kind of campaigning effort, in any advertising of any sort. So, and we do really respectfully request no audio or video. So with that, and really hoping Roger Aylworth arrives eventually, otherwise this could be kind of short. I don't think the candidates mind. Let's get started. Again, if you have questions, please just write it down on a card or piece of paper. Linda Furr would be happy to collect them, and she will bring them up to us. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to our candidates. And we didn't flip a coin or anything to determine who should go first in opening statements. Ladies, do either one of you have a preference? So I guess Pamela Teeter will go first. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pamela Teeter, and I am running for County Clerk Recorder in the June 3rd election. First of all, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event this evening, and thank everybody that came out to hear about the candidates or is watching us on TV. Thank you very much. Elected offices are not meant to be long-term careers. They're meant to foster the rotation of new leadership, fresh perspective, fresh thinking, new ideas. 27 years is quite a career, and it's hard to imagine that it's not the same old business that is being routine in that office at this point in time. An incumbent that has not had an opponent since 2006, it can't quite be said that it was the voters' choice that kept them in the office for this long, as opposed to just being another routine 4 years added on to that long-term career. When I discovered that the incumbent was going to be running again, I was slightly disturbed, but I was more disturbed to realize that it was looking like there was not going to be another candidate and there was not going to be another choice. If I was going to be passionate enough to feel that this department, this office, the voters of Butte County needed a choice, that I decided I was going to be that choice for you. I'm a qualified candidate. I have worked in every aspect of real estate transactions, from lending, title and escrow, project analyst. I was a former realtor. I've had experience with vital records. I'm a qualified candidate, and I'm very happy to be your choice. I've personally walked to over 1,000 doors. I've spoken to hundreds of people within this county. And the voters of Butte County want a choice for this election. So my name is Pamela Teeter. Thank you very much. I hope to be your next clerk recorder.
Go ahead, Candace.
Good evening. Most of you know me as Candace Grubbs, County Clerk Recorder, but I'd like to go into my background a little bit. I was raised on an olive ranch in Oroville. I married a cattle rancher. I have 2 sons. Went to Chico State. And I belong to a number of civic groups, but I also belong to professional groups. And it's those professional groups from which I have gotten a lot of ideas and brought them back to the county. Now, the county office, like mine, a clerk recorder in elections, you have to stay on top of things. And I stand behind my mission statement, which is provide efficient public service, exemplifies the highest standards of courtesy, cost-effectiveness, ethical performance while maintaining and preserving the public's records in a secure and accessible environment, and promote confidence in administration of fair and impartial elections. We have had fair and impartial elections in this county under my realm. We've also had a lot of innovative things that have happened. From the conversion of records to digital format, so that we have the public access to elections that change every year, or every 2 years when we have major elections. So you can be in office for, or a position for 1 year and be stale, or you can be in a position like mine and keep bringing innovative ideas that keep the office moving forward, and in a most cost-effective manner, and which I have. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Tom Gascoigne to ask the first question.
Do I direct my questions to both?
Directly to, yes, to both.
To both,
Both
okay.
must be able to.
Okay, I would like to start with what is the clerk recorder's most important responsibility of all that you've got? What would you say is the most important?
Well, I would say the most important to the public is the administration of fair and accurate elections, because that is what they see. You can talk about budget and all of that, but that is not exactly what affects them directly. What affects them directly is the integrity of the vote, that we try to get as much public input as we can to that process. And the second, so that's about what I would say for that.
Ms. Dieter.
Thank you. I believe that the most important duty of the clerk recorder is the service that it provides the voters and the residents of Butte County. Out of the hundreds of people that I have spoken to, I have heard time and time again of confusing, non-transparent policies, rude customer service when they walk in that office, unanswered questions, whether it's on the recorder side or the election side. This is a service department. We are here to serve the voters, and we are here to serve the residents of Butte County. And I believe that that is the most important duty that the clerk recorder's office has. Thank you.
This question comes from a member of the audience, and the question is, they would like an explanation of how the new primary election works for the office of governor or any partisan office. So there's been a recent shift in California law addressing how primary elections, candidates for the general election are selected through the primary system, and the question has to do with how does that work? It's the question I was handed. So both of you should address the question. And, I guess, the question goes to, understanding how the elections office, what are the I'm going to shift it. What are the responsibilities of the elections office? How do you see?
No, I think the question is what I heard there is more of a question that the difference between partisan and nonpartisan offices. The voter nominated, you have, for partisan offices, you have voter nominated positions. In other words, the political parties cannot nominate their candidates. They're nominated by the, in the primary, by the public, and they move on to the general election. So the top two candidates, they could be of the same party or different parties, but that's why we have an open primary right now with all of the candidates are listed there. And the top two will go on. Now, if one of them happens to get 50% of the vote, you will still have a runoff in November. The nonpartisan offices do not. If you get 50% plus one, you are elected.
Okay. Ms. Teeter needs an opportunity to answer a question. I need to figure out how to rephrase it. I didn't do this quite so well. How do you, the Office of Elections, the primary system has changed, and I'm trying to figure out how you can answer this question. Can you explain how the primary election works for the office of governor in any partisan office?
Well, I'm not quite sure how much more I could add to what Candace has already stated for the answer of that office, because that's just the terminology and the actual process of it. The runoff, if you are a nonpartisan position, would only occur if someone did not get 50% or more, but the partisan you would. So I'm not quite sure what else I could add to that at this point.
Okay. Tom Gascoigne and Ms. Teeter, we're going to give you an opportunity to answer first.
Okay.
Okay, should the clerk recorder's office resume conducting marriages, as it did up until about June of 2008, when at that time the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriages in California were legal? At that same time, coincidentally perhaps, the clerk's office stopped offering marriage ceremonies.
Yes, thank you. I think that it was ill timing for that practice to be ceased at our current recorder's office. Very suspect of the reasonings of why. The marriage ceremonies, the fee associated with that is discretionary at the recorder's office. If it wasn't bringing in enough money, they had discretion to raise that fees. As I said before, I think the most important duty of the Butte County Clerk Recorder's Office is to represent everybody that is in Butte County, voters and residents alike, and I think that is a service that needs to remain. Looking back, it appears that there was over 200 wedding ceremonies performed by the Clerk Recorder's Office prior to them stopping that, and that was also an income revenue of roughly around $8,000 a year that came in from that service. I think that was a revenue stream that should continue with Butte County, and I think that was a service that should continue for everybody in Butte County as well.
Okay, let me answer that. We had no space to handle marriages effectively. And what was happening is they were held out in the atrium, and they became a spectacle in that people would walk through, kids. There was no decorum there. My staff kept coming to me and saying, we don't like to perform ceremonies, and there was no other place to do it. Previous CAO told me we're not in the marriage business when I tried to use the Board of Supervisors room. So yes, the timing was wrong, but we now have designed in the new Hall of Records a room for marriage ceremonies, and that will be offered to everybody. No discrimination, totally. But it gives everybody a spot. Also, since we ceased with marriages, which took a lot of time, and many times we had to fill in with a witness, we have deputy for a day, which has actually brought in more money than the other. So it's not an economic thing. It was a space issue.
Okay. Since Candace answered first time, or Ms. Grubbs answered first time twice in a row, we're going to let Pamela answer first twice in a row, just for equity. What experience have either one of you had with budgets exceeding $4 million and in making decisions and policy determinations with those large budgets?
I have worked within many organizations, large hospitals, large lending institutions that have overseen budgets that have exceeded $4 million. I've always been part of the team that has created the budgets, that has created the protocols and procedures of reviewing, analyzing the financial documentations, what the planning, what the future It is not something that I have immediate direct experience in regards to the last year since I have moved to Butte County. These are all experiences that I have had within California, but I cannot name a specific organization in Butte County that I have been affiliated with all these large budgets.
Ms. Grubbs.
Well, the formation of budgets definitely start with me. And it starts with planning on what is the department going to accomplish? What new program are you going to put in? You bring in, what is the staff cost? What is everything? You put that together. And of course, like many budgets these days, there's an awful lot that the county adds on that we have no control over at all. And it's, so there's about this much we can control and so much that they add in there with no control. But the budget formation starts with me, starts with programs, and then we formulate a budget around that to do what we need to accomplish that year.
This was mentioned a little bit earlier, but I would like to get your take on the proposed Hall of Records. Good thing, bad thing, and is it, you know, how will it serve the county?
Well, the Hall of Records, even if you look at grand jury reports, has been a much-needed facility. For one, our records are scattered all over from Chico State to basements of Memorial Halls to the old county hospital, and not in one place. My elections office is spread into 3 facilities. For efficiency of a small staff to put that all together makes a lot of sense. So this project was started several years ago as a public-partner partnership and then kind of stopped. And now it has started again. Hopefully, it will be a reality, and it's much needed because as we move out of county center, that leaves that lower half of that building for the other offices spread around. So it extends the life of county center, gives the other offices much needed space. So when you look at all the facets, it's much needed, and it is much supported by my recorder's office.
Excellent. Ms. Dieter.
I agree that we should desire to have all of our records underneath one roof. I'm not quite sure accruing an $8 million loan to build this building is something that the county should be doing for one department alone. There's definitely, I think, cause for concern. I understand that we need to respect our history and we want to ensure that we're keeping it in a safe manner, but I have yet to, I'm in the process of reviewing all the costs, but I'm concerned about what the expenditures of having a climate-controlled warehouse of that size and the long-term effects in the budget of the energy bills and the maintenance for that element alone. The square footage and the size of this building, I think, is larger than perhaps it needs to be and is a little grander than it perhaps needs to be. And I would think that there would perhaps be a way to marry another department in with this new building. Having a new building for the Hall of Records all by itself, I'm not quite sure is the most cost-effective in the way Butte County needs to go.
Okay, excellent. Roger? Hi. Okay, just like to let everyone know Roger Aylworth has arrived this evening. We're very happy to see him. Roger, are you going to be asking questions? No. No? Okay. All right, well. At 7:30? Oh, boy. Uh-oh. Oh, dear. Tom, it's you and me. All right. I have another, well, you mean the audience. I have another question from the audience, and this goes to each candidate. As we all know, the economy is down, budgets are stretched, and will either one of you, should you win the election, entertain any downsizing, or as they call it nowadays, right-sizing, of your office and let personnel go? How many, and part of the question is, how many, if so, when, is that something you foresee happening?
Okay, I'll answer that. That's a good question. I have run the recorder's office like a business. It rises and falls depending on the level of income into that department. That's why if I have positions, the economy is down right now. We are not getting the volume of recordings we did when it was overheated, so we're at kind of a leveling off period. And therefore, there are positions that have not been filled. I'm very cautious to see that that is an area where we do not overspend, because we have to have a balanced budget on the recorder's side. Now, the elections is sort of different. The elections is a general fund department. We have a very minimum staff there, and we have to do what is mandated by law. So, and we're dictated by the state and the federal government of how elections are put on. So you don't have a choice there.
Looking at the staff that's currently in the office, going into it, especially as a new elected official, I would not be looking at wanting to downsize that office in any means. I'm going to be relying on my staff that has the day-to-day knowledge to help ensure that the department is running smoothly. I am never one that wants to go in there and downsize or right-size, if the term is, that's what the trend is right now. I think that there's other ways to look at the budget to see what the most effective way is if you're coming up across tight budgets, tight finances. All the more reason why I think that this current building of the Hall of Records is perhaps an inappropriate time to be addressing this matter. And again, just seeking a better resolve of that. I think that's going to be an expense for the county. I think that's going to hit the department hard, and might be forced to make some choices that you wouldn't want to make if you didn't have that. That's quite the volley.
What are some of the major challenges facing Butte County, at least in relationship to this particular office? Some of the challenges you see?
Okay. Go ahead. Well, I think one of the largest challenges is almost informing the general public of what this department does and what it does for them. Out of the 1,000 people that 1,000 homes that I've knocked on and 100 people, I don't know how many countless number of people that have come up to me and confuse me with the tax collector. And I'm like, no, that's not the department I'm running for. They don't understand what this department does, and I think that goes towards the education of what these departments are for. These departments serve the county, they serve the residents, they serve the voters, and obviously there seems to be quite a confusion or misunderstanding or a lack of education in regards to what this department does for them. I think the other largest challenge that we face specifically within the elections office is our voter machines. We have old machines, we have machines that we haven't been able to use because they haven't been certified by the state of California, and we're going into an era of everybody looking at what is the new trend, how are we going to get back into electronic voting. Thank you.
You know, Pamela is correct. People don't know what our office does. They don't think about it because it is functioning very well. The fact is if you get married, if you have a baby born, or you or someone dies in your family, or you record a document because you bought or sold property, it all goes through that office, and of course you vote. So you see, when things are going well, they don't quite understand, they just know that they work. And I've run across a lot of people, and they do say, well, are you the tax collector? No, I'm not the tax collector. Clerk recorder, do you vote? Oh yeah, I vote. Well, you know, that is the thing. If you're working well, people don't really look at it. As far as a challenge in the voting machines, of course there is. There's been no money for new equipment. And it doesn't look like it will happen on the federal level, so that will be a challenge down the line. But all counties in this state are challenged with that, as they are across the nation.
I just want to let both of you know that I have been reminded to call you both Mrs. Grubbs and Mrs. Teeter. I do apologize for the use of first names. As a teacher, it's kind of a habit, and I do apologize.
That's just fine.
So, who took the question first last time? Whose turn is it to go first?
Probably mine.
Okay. So in that previous question, in terms of, people not understanding what your office does, kind of leads into this next question, and that is there a lack of transparency in the clerk, recorders, and elections office? And if so, how would you increase that transparency with the public?
Who are you addressing?
It goes to both of you.
Well, first, okay.
Oh, I think Mrs. Teeter indicated that you get to take the question first this time. Am I correct or incorrect?
Oh, is mine? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, then, transparency. You need to look at our website, buttevotes.net. It has a lot of information out there, statistical information that goes back lots of elections. In fact, that website is, by political people, is counted one of the best in Northern California. Transparent. We have a lot of transparency on that site as far as all the material that we distribute that is at hand in our office.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I definitely feel that there is a lack of transparency out of the hundreds of people that I've spoken to within this county. There is a confusion in the day-to-day operations and the fees that are charged within this department. I have hearing stories from real estate professionals, title agencies, that one day it's this answer, the next day it's another answer. And with someone, this is a recorder's office, there shouldn't be any confusion. Everything should be very transparent. There should be a very clear understanding. There shouldn't be any miscommunication about what a fee would be to record a document. I don't feel that this is being properly addressed. The website does list fees, but again, as I say, offices will tell me that they go in one day, it's one fee, the same documents, same page numbers. You go in the next day, it depends on who's at the counter, it's going to be another fee.
No, I'm
It seems to be a long-term.
I'm going to answer that. That is not so. Recording fees are set. What she's talking about is transfer tax, and that is on the value of the property being transferred.
To remind, please, I realize that sometimes candidates might make statements that might upset another candidate. However, please write down your comments. If you wish to rebut, you can rebut in your closing statement. And Ms. Teeter, did we cut her off for time, or did she finish her time on the question? 20 seconds left. Okay, so 20 seconds to finish your answer.
Okay. Through these conversations, it just appears that there's a strained working relationship with the professionals in the real estate industry, and that is something that I would want to improve. I think it's warranted. They are our repeat clients in the recorder's office, and as a business, you'd want to harvest that. Thank you.
Okay, this is basically the same question. I just have to word it differently. For Mrs. Grubbs, the question is, why do you want to continue in this job? And for Mrs. Teeter, why do you want this job?
Do I go first? Yes. Okay. I want this job because I think that the public deserves a choice. I think that the public deserves to have a strong leadership that's going to respect the staff in their office and is going to respect the people that come in and do business with this office. The recent investigation that stated that this department had a toxic work environment upset me greatly. I think this is something that we should not expect from our government. It's stated that the current leadership is not addressing this matter, and for someone that's been an incumbent for as long as she has, I feel that this is unacceptable. This isn't a first-term person that's just learning the ropes, getting to know what's going on, dealing with personality changes. This is someone that's been in office long enough to understand that you lead by example. if you have an unhappy staff, you're not going to have great customer service within that department, and the public deserved to have a choice, and the public deserved to have better leadership, so that's why I'm running.
Why do I want the job? Well, first, I think I better answer that. Yes, I believe we had an incident, as everybody knows, and it was something that should have stayed within the office and was handled very badly by administration. You know, there's always times in any office, just like a corporate office, is that when you need to sit down and say, and look at things again. I have great respect for all of my staff, and they have a great respect for me. It doesn't say, though, that you every once in a while you may get angry or upset at something. The issue is to have this situation handled in the manner it was handled with administration and HR totally upset my staff. I have a great staff. They are working hard. A lot of innovative ideas coming up, even this week. And so why do I want the job? I have got a lot of things that are unfinished at this time. Just the whole conversion project that we're under, and I bring passion to my job, and I love it. It is a great job, and yes, I'll stop.
I have one last question, and then I will give the floor to Tom Gascoigne to ask one last question, then we're going to go to closing statements. This particular question has to do with conflicts of interest, and do either one of you, how would either one of you deal with a conflict of interest within the particular office? Ms. Grubbs, you've sort of addressed one that came up very publicly, and for Mrs. Teeter, do you see the fact that your husband is a supervisor and will help set the budget for the office as a conflict of interest? Is that an asset, or is that a potential problem?
You know, excuse me, I didn't hear the first part that you addressed to me. What
Can
did you say
anybody hear
there?
me? Okay. The first part of your question, it's on conflicts of interest. We've seen a very public conflict come up, whether it was a conflict of interest. I'm not sure, I wasn't tracking it.
Okay.
However, how would you handle conflicts of interest when they come up with the office?
Okay, I think conflict of interest means that if such as I'm an elected official, but I run elections, that's a conflict to many people's minds. So how do you do that? Number one, I do not know the vote count program. I do not go into the room that has anything to do with that. So most county clerks in Northern California are elected. So you have what I call an ethical divide on what you can do. Now, while I can train precinct officers, I cannot count votes. I cannot set up the vote count program or any of that. That is all done by staff. So I keep that conflict of interest out of, and been very diligent over the years to do that.
And then, Ms. Teeter, the addendum was that your husband is a member of the Board of Supervisors, and do you see that as an asset or a potential source of where there might be a conflict of interest?
Well, I consider that neither. I mean, I would not be involved in any policy making of the board. I would not expect any favoritism from the board simply because I am an elected official and running a department of the Butte County. There will be times when the Board of Supervisors would need to vote on budgets of the department if I were elected. That's something that he could easily recuse himself from doing if the public felt that it was inappropriate for him to be voting on that. I have no ambition of going into this position of trying to go extreme on the budget, go anything that is not the run-of-the-mill standard running an operation. So something that he would be more than happy to recuse himself on voting for if that came down to that.
And last question to Tom Gascoigne.
I'm just wondering, Ms. Grubbs, you've have not been challenged very often as you've been in office. And Ms. Teeter, you are running for office. I think this is probably for the first time. How would you describe your campaigns as we get closer to the June election? Beyond signs and empty lots, what do you plan to do to keep your names out there and let people know how you think, besides this sort of a thing? Please describe your campaign as you plan it as we get closer to the election.
Okay, who goes first?
Go ahead.
Mrs. Teeter, I think it's your turn to go first.
Okay. Well, my campaign is to remain doing what I have been doing, and that is getting out and meeting as many people as I possibly can. Like I mentioned, I've already knocked on 1,000 homes, and I continue to plan on doing that all the way up until June 3rd, well, June 2nd. It's the education, it's introducing myself. It is, for the people that aren't aware of what the department does, there's many that don't even know who the incumbent is that's running. It's going up to them, knocking on them, saying, hi, this is who I am, this is why I think you should vote for me, this is why I think you should consider changing the office, this is why I think that it's time for new leadership. And I have had a very positive response from all the homes that I've been knocking on and all the people I've been talking to, and I plan to continue to do the same. Thank you.
Well, it is a challenge in my position, because my first and foremost responsibility is the conduct of a good election. And so, you know, whether we're training precinct officers or whatever we're doing, that does cut into my time. But I do plan to do walking, I've been to forums, and probably do some mailings and some advertising. The issue of people not knowing what the department does, again, I go back to things. If things are working well, they don't think about them. And that is the real issue there.
Okay, thank you very much. And now is an opportunity for each one of you to give a 2-minute closing statement. I believe Mrs. Grubbs gave went first on the opening statements. So, Mrs. Teeter, if you would like, I'd allow you to go first on the closing statements.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am the new person that is running for this office, and I do not have 27 years' experience running the department of the clerk recorder's office. I will be relying on the day-to-day operation knowledge of the staff that is in that office, but that does not mean that I'm not going to be working hard to understand fully everything that this job entails. I have bedside reading that is as tall as I am that I'm working my way through. I've requested lots of information in regards to budget history, voter history, election history, the Hall of Records. I'm researching everything that I can. I have requested loads and loads of information from the county. I'm taking this position very seriously. Not only am I doing all my prep work, but I'm also going out there talking to all the businesses that deal with the recorder's office and the voters in regards to what they would like to see changed. And I have quite a list that I want to acknowledge and to say that I'm going to take seriously if elected into this position, and create the most harmonious work environment that I can to best represent the voters and the residents of Butte County. So with your vote, I hope to be your next clerk recorder at the June 3rd election. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Grubbs.
Yes. Over the past few years, I brought in lots of innovative ideas. In fact, sometimes I've been ahead of the curve, and especially with our technology. And so I'm very proud of an office that can pull together electronic voting machines in the 3 months that we had to get them together. Now those are obsolete, so we're looking forward to the next challenge, and I've already joined a group, CAVO, California Association of Voting Officials, to look at what's next down the line, open source, what can we do there. My office gets compliments every day on its running and the professionalism of the staff. I'm very proud of that staff. And as far as the issues of transfer tax, those come to the benefit of both the cities and the county. It does not go to the benefit of my department. And so that is a revenue source for both those entities. It's one we're charged with for taking and or collecting, and it does make us in conflict, just like any position that has to collect a tax from somebody. We don't like to pay it. But again, I want to stand on my reputation of the last 27 years. This is going on 28. And the fact that you can be stale in a job in a year, or you can be innovative and forward-thinking and been there as long as I have. So I would like to have your vote come June 3rd. And thank you very much. It's been an enjoyable evening.
Thank you both. Now you may applaud. Okay, we are going to take a 10-minute break as we change up for the assessors candidates. Thank you.
I met your husband when we were doing the forum up in Paradise. I was very impressed. He's so and all the technology is very admiring of her because I like it. So
He's definitely the IT professional in our house.
very much so. So thank you for coming. And I think this will reach more people through the streaming of the painful.
What's already little painful?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a little painful. That's
If everybody could please retake their seats, and if the candidates could please take seats at the podium. I see we have 3 out of 5, now 4 out of 5. Let's see.
Mike's on.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the election race for the county assessor. We have with us this evening Diane Brown, Virgil Gage, Al Peterson, and Rudy Rindlisbacher. Did I pronounce that correctly? Thank you. Thank you. Does everyone know how to work the microphones? If you leave the little green light, if you leave it on so the little green light is continuously showing, you hit push. And if it's continuously showing, if you just lean back and you don't have to worry about so much about it, or you can turn it off and on if you're more comfortable with that. Just make sure anytime you answer a question, the microphone is on. In this particular race, each one of you has 2 minutes to introduce yourself and make an opening statement. And then when it gets time to questions, there's 1 minute each to answer questions, just like the last one. And again, members of the audience, we will be looking to you for questions as well. So let's just go in alphabetical order. Mrs. Brown or Ms. Brown, which do you prefer? Mrs. Brown, we'll give you the floor.
Okay, my name is Diane Brown. I'm running for assessor. I started with the office in August of 1983 as a typist clerk. Worked my way up through the ranks. I'm now a principal appraiser. When I started with the office, I worked just about every job. I was one of the first clerks allowed to do field work when I was checking the exemptions, which freed up an appraiser, saving the office money. I was the first female in the office to work the mountains, which I did. I worked the mountainous areas when it was too dangerous for the code enforcement officers. They required deputy assistants and escorts to do the mountain areas. I worked them alone. I'm now a principal appraiser. I've been a principal appraiser since 2002. I managed the Paradise branch office. I'm running for assessor because I believe that I am qualified to do the job. I love my job. I believe I'm the most experienced candidate. I've got office experience in every aspect of the office. I've done just about every job. I know the office inside out, and I believe that I can do a good job as assessor, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
My name is Virgil Gage, and I'm running for the Butte County Assessor's Office. I spent the most of my career doing assessments in the public arena. I did assessments on companies that built hardware for the military, built hardware for the space program, and communications, and NASA. As an assessor, I went out and assessed these companies for approval to build these products. I also assessed companies that built pacemakers, defibrillators, and insulin pumps. The last 15 years of my career, I ran my own business. I did assessments on companies and approved them for a worldwide standard that they could manufacture product for these products. So I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of management experience. So I have ample experience to run this assessor's office, and I would appreciate it if you folks would give me a chance. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Al Peterson, and the spelling of Peterson is S-E-N on the very end, so I had to make a little line across there to get that fixed. But I'm used to doing that. That's been happening all my life. I'm running for the office because I'm dedicated to the improvement of the assessor's office, and I have the qualifications to get the job done. If you wonder what qualifications are needed to lead this office, then consider the responsibility of managing an office of 40 employees, a $3.5 million budget, and a total property valuation of over $19 billion. Obviously, the leader of the office must have a management, appraisal, and assessment experience and be familiar with all the areas of the county and its operation. I am the only candidate that currently qualifies to hold any job within this Butte County office, and if the job was for assistant assessor, I would be the only one that would be eligible to get past the initial screening. My experience is diverse. It comes from 3 different counties plus independent fee appraisal. I worked in Yuba County when I first graduated from college. I got my advanced certification down there, and then I worked for Butte County for 12 years as the commercial and industrial property appraiser, and now I'm in Sutter County, and I'm supervising for 5 years, and I supervise both the real property appraisal department and also the auditors and personal property department. I also have a certification in auditor appraising, so that is those are my specialties, and that's why I'm qualified to run the office. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rudy Rundlisbacher. I own Mason McDuffie Realty in Orville. I moved to Butte County in about 1975. Prior to moving here, I was a Safeway store manager. I managed the 2nd largest Safeway store in San Francisco. I've been a licensed real estate agent and broker for over 35 years. I've done hundreds of price opinions for banks and private individuals over the years. I'm a past president of the Orville Board of Realtors. And I feel I'm qualified for this job. Thank you.
First question will be asked by Mr. Gascoigne, and it will go if Mr. Gage would please respond first, and then we'll go to Mr. Peterson, Mr. Rindlisbacher, and then finally Mrs. Brown.
Yes, could you, in layman's terms, please explain the process for appraising property values? How does this work?
To appraise properties, you must first go to the building department and find out if there's any new construction that's going to be built on the property. After you find out that there is going to be new construction built on the property, then you have to watch the costs of the property, of the new construction. Then what you have to do is, once you get the building built, you do an evaluation of the property's values that are around that piece of property. And from there, you calculate what the assessed value is of that property.
Mr. Peterson.
There are 3 basic ways of appraising property, but the first thing you do when you're appraising property is determine what you're appraising. You either go out and inspect the property yourself, measure it, and determine what sort of quality of construction. You look at the lot, you take a good image, and you find out what you're appraising exactly. Then you use the different tools, which is either the cost approach, the income approach, or the sales comparison approach. Each one of those is a lot of intricacy in it, and I don't think I have time to go through all of that, but that is the basics of appraisal. You find out what you're appraising, then you do the analysis, and then you do a reconciliation to determine the final value.
Basically, on appraisals, you use comparables. You have to know what you're appraising. You have to know the square footage, the age of the property, condition of the property, and the comparables that you're using, whether they're going to match up to what you're looking at for this particular property. All property has a value, but you might run into different situations where one property is obsolete for one reason or another, which would give it a lower value. You have to take that into consideration when you're doing your appraisal.
For property tax purposes, there's 2 times that we appraise property. One is new construction, the other is change in ownership. So first you have to determine what you're doing. Then you determine the method that you're going to use to appraise the property, whether it's the cost approach, the income approach, or the market approach. For the market approach, then you would determine what your comparables are, you would determine what your property is, the quality class, and you get your comparables. If you're using your the income approach, if it's a income producing property, then you would determine what comparables that you're going to use for your income approach. But first, for property tax purposes, you have to determine what you're doing. If you're doing a new construction property or if it's a change in ownership. So you have to do that first.
Thank you. I'm going to get a little bit more basic into Local Governance 101. And the question is, how does the appraiser's office fit into overall county governance and assessors, and why do we have an assessor's office? What's its purpose? And we're going to start with Mr. Peterson, go to Mr. Rindlisbacher, then to Mrs. Brown, and then to Mr. Gage.
I'll tell you, I'm glad you asked that question because the assessor's office is part of the backbone of our county government. Most of the county government gets attention because they're providing services to everybody and they're managing budgets and they're determining policies on marijuana growing, etc. But the assessor's office is the backbone because the assessor's office is the primary part of the function of the revenue that comes in order to fund the operations of government. The assessor's office is critical that way. It's if there's an imbalance in the way the assessor is doing his job, then there can be quite a big disruption in the whole operation. We're like the foundation of county government, and like Candace said, if we're doing a good job, people don't know it. But if you want to see what can happen when there's a bad job happening in there, there can be major implications.
Well, the assessor's office values the whole county properties, and that is sent on to the tax collector, and the tax collector is the one that sends out the bills based on the assessments of that property. You have to be fair and balanced in your approach to assessing property so that you don't get too much one way or the other on it. You have to be pretty much in the middle on it.
Well, the assessor's office does a couple of things. For one thing, it locates and identifies all taxable property in the county and maintains the ownership records on that property. So we get a lot of traffic through our lobby for people looking for ownership records, whether it's the vacant house on the corner that they want to rent, or a neighbor next door that they're having problems with, or just identifying property in general. And the second thing is we assess all the taxable property in the county. The assessor's office is responsible for 60% of the general purpose revenue for the county. 70% of that general purpose revenue goes to fund police, fire, district attorney, and probation services. So it's responsible for a big chunk of the county revenue. And that's basically what the assessor's office does.
Well, the assessor's office, in my opinion, is probably the most important office in the county. It affects every person that lives in the county, one way or another. It affects the homeowner, it affects the renter, it affects the people that go out and buy products. Because whenever you raise the assessment value of the homes and increase the tax on the homes, it affects every individual, everyone. And the thing that I found that when I was first started in this campaign, I went out and I talked to approximately 3,000 people. And the most revealing question that I got asked was, what does the assessor do? Well, if this department, which is the most important part of the county, and people don't even know what it does, that to me is really a problem, because you cannot tax people and affect their life the way that the assessor's office does, and people don't even know what they do.
Thank you, Mr. Gage. Please, to all candidates, make sure you watch for the red stop signal. If you could hold that up so they can all get an idea. Keep an eye out. They do a very efficient job of keeping track of your time, and I will be in trouble if I let anybody go over.
We won't
Okay.
be in trouble.
Back to Mr. Gascoigne.
Okay, I would like to know your evaluation of Prop 13, the property tax law passed in 1978. Has it run its course? Was it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? There's been complaints that it hurts government by cutting in revenue. So just your evaluation of Prop 13 after all these years.
We'll start with Mr. Rindlisbacher, then go to Mrs. Brown, Mr. Gage, and Mr. Peterson.
All right. When I was living in the Bay Area, I had a house that at the time sold for $25,000. And the taxes were about $300 a year, I think. And over a few years that I lived there, they climbed all the way up to $1,200. And then Proposition 13 came into effect, and they dropped back down. And I think Proposition 13 is a must for the public. It's the only fair way to do it. Otherwise, government's going to go crazy. Thank you.
Well, what Proposition 13 did was it actually did two things. It not only fixed the values at the 1975 market value, or it fixed a base value based on the transfer value, whatever base your value it transferred at, but it also changed the tax rates. You know, I was, back when Proposition 13 passed, I was still in high school, so I wasn't really feeling the effects. But I've seen tax bills in old files, and some of the tax bills were horrendous, not because of the value, but because of the tax rates. And so Proposition 13 is, even though it may have hurt the county coffers at one time, it's definitely a necessary thing. It kept people from being taxed out of their homes, so it's a good thing.
Well, most people don't realize that Prop 13 was actually passed because of the renters. Because the renters were paying these high prices to the rent on their property because of the taxes. And the property owners weren't returning the money back to the renters. So Prop 13 was actually passed to benefit the renters initially. However, it made the homeowners' taxes a lot better as well, which lowered their tax ability and liability. But what it did was that it caused the rents to go down. And it's a good thing. We can better use our money if the people have the money to spend. And a lot of times, taxes bring a negative effect upon the population and causes all kinds of problems. But I think Prop 13 was a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Gage. Time's up. Sorry. I don't want to get in trouble. Mr. Peterson.
I agree with Ms. Brown's assessment of Prop 13. It's got a lot of complications. What I like to bring up is the fact that Prop 13 is the fun thing for everybody to talk about, and but it's kind of, for us, it's kind of like the weather. You really, no matter how much we talk about it, we can't change it in the assessor's office. We get to deal with it, and certainly there's parts of it that are frustrating, and certain parts that got added on that seems like they're going in the wrong direction, and sometimes they're going in the right direction. What, before Prop 13, there was Article 13 of the state constitution is what is the foundation of our whole property tax system, and then Article 13A is the Prop 13 addition to our constitution that added to it. So there's lots of parts in the beginning section, Article 13, that are confusing and difficult to deal with also. But 13A is another part, and we just have to deal with all the parts.
Thank you. We're going to be starting with Mrs. Brown this time, and well, you thought you'd get to dodge the marijuana question, but you don't. The question has to do with, there are properties in the foothills and other rural areas of Butte County, and some properties closer into city areas that are, that have grows on them. And the question, is there or has there been an effect of the assessed valuation of properties around them that are not grow sites, but ones that are immediately adjacent to or quite near?
In the areas where I work, there really hasn't... No, it's actually on. Okay. In the areas where I work in the foothill areas that are closer into town, and there actually has not been an effect on the property values. But the areas where I work is actually a little smaller grows, where it's more the typical medical marijuana situation and not the huge grows. In the areas where, in the main mountain areas where there's the huge grows, the values have actually gone up because people from out of the area are coming to buy those properties. And so we're seeing actually more transfers and higher values than if there weren't grows, which you would think it was the opposite, but it's actually, the values are actually going up, and there's actually more transfers in those areas than if there wasn't the pot.
I don't think that we've really seen the impact of this on our community yet. This marijuana issue has been kicked around for the last several years. There's been several amendments made to it. There's been several changes. We have a new proposition right now that we're going to vote on in November. The Board of Supervisors just approved for it to go on the ballot. So we haven't seen really the impact of this yet. But, just let me say this, I think that there will be a definite impact. Whenever this thing gets all shook out, it's going to have an impact on our community.
Mr. Peterson.
Can I ask you to repeat the question?
Well, the question is that has to do with, the marijuana grows in the area, in the county, and whether or not if there has been an effect and a decrease in the value. Okay.
Just read it as I wrote it.
Okay. That the properties in the foothills and other rural areas of Butte County have had their, this feels the values have been decreased due to the grows of marijuana. So, what has been that effect, and have you, is there anything the assessor can actually do to address any of that?
We haven't had a lot of experience with valuing properties in the foothills down in Sutter County, where I'm at currently. I think what Diane said is one of the, I'm sorry, Mrs. Brown said, was one of the things that I had heard was that the values were actually increasing. People were paying tremendous amounts of money for anything that they could grow on. The whole marijuana grow question is just encompasses a whole lot of parts of our government and our taxation system, and it's like there's a lot to be ironed out. I don't think I could say that there's a specific answer to that. It's a very broad question.
Mr. Rindlisbacher.
This marijuana thing, we've had some listings in my office that we've had to turn down because of a marijuana grow next door. This is not something that the assessor's office has any control over in any way, other than trying to come up with a value for a piece of property that might be being infringed in by a marijuana grower next door with 100, 200 plants. That really needs to be addressed by the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, this kind of touches on sort of the same thing. Besides this particular matter of the marijuana, what are some of the major challenges facing Butte County in relation to the assessor's office?
I think what probably one of the real problems that's facing the assessor's office right now is the drop in the home prices. Not because of anything that we've done. It's because of the real estate bubble that broke 3 or 4 years ago. In the fact that these property values have dramatically dropped. And if in that case, the income from that program is going to drop. So we've got that battle to fight yet.
I believe that the biggest problem facing the assessor's office in the near future is being able to keep up with technology and using that technology to more efficiently do our job. Right now, the law still says, has a lot of archaic parts to it that say we have to appraise each property individually and use a certain technique in this. And Prop 13 was written quite a long time ago, we know now, 25, 35 years or more, and that hasn't kept up. The legislature needs to make changes to some of the laws so that we can be more efficient, or we need a tremendous amount of technology so we can try to keep up with things. These reductions, the Prop 8 reductions, increase the assessor's workload by about 20,000 assessments every single year, and that's been a tremendous burden, and we really need some technology to keep up with it.
Well, declining prices don't really have anything to do with the assessor's office. That's a market condition that's happened. The assessor is there to be fair and balanced on his assessment of property, so that's people aren't overpaying their taxes, nor are they underpaying their taxes. There's a lot of laws as to how you appraise property and what sort of deductions people can take for it. But that's what the assessor's office is there for, is just to put a value on the property.
I think the biggest challenge facing our office is the rise in the real estate market. We had 26,000 parcels under Prop 8 review, so they were reduced from their factored base year value. There's currently about 22,000 parcels under Prop 8 review, and so we're going to be looking at those. Right now, the people that are doing those reviews are seeing increases somewhere around 10 to 15% of parcels are being increased in value. And so I think the biggest challenge we're going to be facing is to get the taxpayers to understand why their values are going up now, how they're being increased, and to get them to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we're going to be facing, is those values going back up.
This question goes to basically leadership. There's a difference between what the assessor's staff does as a unit and what the elected official in charge of the assessor's office does. So what did you see the main job as the head of the department, in terms of leadership and skills and bringing, talking about innovative ideas. So what particular qualifications do you see are really important to bring to the elected position, the leadership position in the assessor's office? And we'll start with Mr. Peterson.
The assessor is the leader of the office. He's got essentially, kind of divided up into three parts. One is to be the person that has the final say in all decisions. The second part is that he's part of the team. The team is involved in getting the job done. The assessor's office is a factory, and there's a lot of work that has to be done. In some cases, that leader needs to show that he's willing to get out there and do the work that everybody else is doing in the office. Sometimes that's what needs to be done in order to get the job done. The third part is the assessor is a motivational leader. His job is to make sure that people feel good about their jobs, that they have a drive that makes them want to do the best thing they can for their best work for the office and do their best work for the public. The public is the assessor's office is in the public trust, and we have to always remember that the public is who we're working for.
Well, the assessor is really a supervisory position. He has to be sure that all the departments under his control are running at optimum performance. And that's basically the assessor's job, is to make sure that the office comes together and works together towards the same goals.
Ms. Brown.
Well, the assessor is not merely just an administrator. The assessor needs to bring a lot of things to the table. It needs to have, they design the appraisal program. And so in order to do that, they need to have an understanding of appraisal. They also need to have an understanding of economics. They also have to, so they're setting the tone for the whole program. They need to lead by example. The staff, they have to be somebody that the staff is willing to follow. And so it's really important that they not only have the leadership qualities, but also they have the work ethic and the skills that the staff is willing to follow. And so it's really important that the leader has those qualities.
When you're standing outside looking at a position, it looks easy. Some people say, I could do that. Anybody could do that. I even heard somebody say one time that, where could you work an hour a day and make that kind of money? Well, it's not that way. I'll tell you, being an assessor is hard work. There's a lot of reports that you've got to make to the public, a lot of records that you've got to make available to the public. It's not an easy job. It's a hard job. It's not an 8-hour job. It's a 10 to 12-hour job. And if you think it's easy, you haven't done it. That's all I got to say. And you have to be a leader. You can't push people to do these things. You've got to lead. You've got to show them how to do it. You've got to know how to do it yourself. Thank you.
Well, I think one of you have more of an insight into this question than the other three, but how would you rate the performance of the incumbent, Fred Holland, as an assessor?
Is that a question for me?
We start with Mr. Rindlisbacher, yes.
Yeah. As far as I am aware, Fred Holland did a good job in there. I haven't heard of any major problems that have cropped up in there. I've heard of a few complaints from the general public as to when their property might get appraised higher than they think it should be. But as far as the work ethic in the office, I think Fred's done a good job.
I think Fred's done a really good job. We've got really high morale in the office. We work together well as a team. I think our customer service skills are one of the best in the whole building. So we're actually very happy under Fred. We were kind of disappointed that he didn't run again. And so I think Fred has done a really good job as assessor.
I've known Fred Holland for some time, and when I found out that he wasn't going to run, I went and visited him at his office. Fred has integrity, honesty, and he's done a good job. He's done a good job. The people that I meet have nothing but good things to say about Fred. Fred's always been helpful, and it's going to be tough to fill his shoes, but we'll do our best.
Well, I have a little bit different perspective. Having experience from 3 different assessors' office and private industry, I think Fred is a good appraiser. He's a great guy. He's very he's liked by the employees. My thing with Fred is that I don't think he's done enough. I think that the office has a need to get some improvement in there, somebody with more initiative and somebody that has more modern managerial and leadership skills. There's 3 things that are strong indicators of the need for that. One is there's been excessive turnover in the office, and right now they're still short-staffed. Their second one is that there's been an excessive amount of role corrections that have been needed to be done for the last 3 or 4 years. It's been a tough record on that. And the last one is that the cable television appeal is still sitting there from the year 2002, I think, and it hasn't been resolved.
Okay, starting at this end with Mrs. Brown. And this has to do with another land use clash, and from the audience, a question about fracking and how fracking might affect property values. Apparently, some insurers for agricultural land will not cover land where fracking is taking place or surrounding properties to a fracking well. And so the concern is that if is how fracking might affect that. And I'm guessing that the question is probably something that maybe have come up along, an answer to this may have come up somewhere along the through other areas where fracking does occur. So,
as I understand it, the Butte County is the way that the geology works here. Fracking is not feasible in Butte County, and so it would not happen here. And it's just because of the way that our water table is set up and the ground is set up that fracking is not even a feasible possibility here. So it would never even happen. And so, but if it did happen, it would be handled the way any other contaminated property would be handled. And so there are mechanisms in the law to handle contaminated property, but as I understand it, it's not even a possibility in Butte County.
Well, I don't think that's even a question that we can field at this point. We don't have enough information. How can we make a decision? It's not a decision that we'd make anyway. That's a decision that would come from the Board of Supervisors or from the voters. All we can do is carry out the rules that are laid before us. So I don't know how you could answer that question.
I think I agree that it's a subject that is something to talk about a lot, but the assessor's office doesn't have a lot of involvement in it. I can tell you that down in the county I work right now, we have over 400 gas wells, and I've been appraising them for the last 2 or 3 years, and they're very interesting appraisals. You have to know a little bit about geology and a lot about economics and the income flow, and it's a very complicated income approach appraisal. So it's really quite interesting, and it's really guesswork, kind of like oil wells, when you drill a well, you just don't know how much money is going to get out of that. Well, the appraiser's job is to determine what the value is of that whole well. So we try to come up with a reasonable conclusion on it, but it's a difficult appraisal.
Well, the assessor's office really doesn't have any control over fracking, so I don't know what we can say about it. We can be for it or against it, or whichever way we might want to lean. I don't particularly care for it, but that's, as an assessor, I wouldn't have much say in that. So
I'm going to give one last question to Mr. Gascoigne, and then I have one last question, and then we're going to go to the closing statements.
I asked this earlier to the previous candidates. Why do you want this job? What is driving you to want to take on this fairly complex, tough job?
I'm going to start with Mr. Gage.
With Mr. Gage.
Well, I've got the experience, I've got the background, I've worked in the public arena for a long time. I think that that experience would enhance the department as far as upgrading how things are done, how things are recorded, the reports that go out. And I think it would be a good fit for me, and it would be a good fit for the county.
Well, as I said in my initial talk there, that I'm running for the office because I'm dedicated to the improvements of the Assessor's Department. Another reason is I want to come back to Butte County. I've lived in Butte County for 30 years, and I enjoyed my career here, enjoyed working for the Butte County Assessor's Office. I went to Sutter County in order to get experience in management and supervision, and I've learned an awful lot down there, and now I'm interested in coming back, and my assessor supports me and says that he supports anyone that's interested in improving their career and being ambitious, and this is an ideal position for me to be going into, and I'm going to enjoy working with my co-workers, the former co-workers. It's going to be great.
well, I met with Fred prior to putting my name in for this, and he seemed to think that with all the experience that I've had in real estate, that I would be a good match for it. So I went ahead and did it. If he had told me no, that you can't do it, then I wouldn't have signed up for it. But I believe I can do the job. I've got the experience for it, and I've been in management positions, so I know how that goes too. Thank you.
Well, after being in the department for 30 years, with the encouragement of most of my coworkers, I decided it was time. I love what I do. I love working in the department. It's the best job I've ever had, and it was just a natural progression. And so if I didn't have the support of my coworkers, I never would have done it. But, I love working in the department, and that's why I decided to do this.
Okay, so starting with Mr. Peterson, I had to consult my seating chart here, or question chart. And this question went to the previous set of candidates, but it's also intended for you. And it has to do with the economy. The economy's down, the budgets are stretched, and will any of you entertain any idea of downsizing or right-sizing the assessor's office if you are elected?
Well, first off, I believe from the information I got at another one of these forums that the assessor has 38 employees right now, and there is a capacity or allotment of jobs for, I believe, 41. And so I think we're already down a few jobs, and some of them need to be filled. In fact, there's openings right now that are being filled. So at this point, it would not make sense to downsize immediately. We do have some supervisory positions that need to be filled, and I think there's certain adjustments that need to be made in the whole hierarchy of the office. I think it's a little bit, most of the leadership is all in the assessor and the assistant assessor, and I believe the responsibility should be trickled down so that people have more of a sense of ownership of the office.
Well, I don't see any reason to be cutting the office until I get in there and see what it runs like. You have to know how everybody's performing their job before you start thinking about whether or not you can downsize. It could be that the office has been running well. I know that Fred has wanted to add more employees, at least one more, which makes me think that they're at capacity, but that may be something that could be looked at once I'm elected.
Well, because of the management of the Board of Supervisors, the county is actually not in the same fiscal position as some of the surrounding cities. And so our budget is actually not down. It's actually has been increased by 2% over last year's budget. So there's we're actually going to increase our positions by 3 before this assessor leaves office. So there is no potential for downsizing at all. And so we're actually in really good shape. We're going to add positions, and so there's no downsizing.
Downsizing is a very painful thing. It has to be done sometimes, but when you downsize and things change, you have to bring the people back in. I learned a long time ago when I managed not only my own company, but worked as a manager in other companies, that there's better ways of doing it. You can cut back on your expenses. You can do a lot of things to keep from downsizing, because you're going to lose your good people. You're going to lose the ones that know how to do the work. And it's a real difficult time to come back up again. I would look at ways of keeping the people, cutting back on other things, and not letting these people go.
Okay, each one of you has 2 minutes to make a closing statement. And Mr. Rindlisbacher, we're going to start with you.
All right. Like I say, with the 35 years I've had in real estate, I feel I'm well qualified for this job. I run my office on what I call the HILL principle, which is honesty, integrity, legality, and loyalty. And that's the way I would hope to run the assessor's office. Everything should mesh together and be fair and balanced. Thank you.
We currently have 38 people on staff. We've had as many as 50 before, so we're doing a lot with a lot less people. It's been said that we have too many roll corrections. Well, that's what we have. We have a computer system that we share with the auditor and the tax collector's office, which allows us to be pretty efficient. The roll corrections that we processed for the last couple of years have been Prop 8 reductions that we do up until the time the bills are printed. So it's a relatively cheap process. It doesn't cost the county any more. We do them as many as we can to reduce as many assessments as we can, to provide as much relief to people as we possibly can, to provide the greatest relief to as many taxpayers as we can. But it's a cheap process because we can do it electronically without actually correcting bills. The cable TV appeal that was brought up, it's been continued for years at the request of the taxpayer. So it hasn't. It's not as a result of anything the assessor's office is doing. Our staff has done an excellent job. We have an excellent staff doing a great customer service job. Our office is run well. I think under my leadership, it will continue to run well. We work well as a team. we'll continue to work well as a team. I think my particular set of skills is different than everyone else's because it comes from a different place. I have managed the office before. I have no doubt that I'll be able to do it again. I love the office. I would be proud to be the next assessor. I'd love to make history and be the first woman assessor of Butte County. Thank you for your support.
Well, I guess I've used up more time than I should have, but I think everybody understands where I'm coming from and understands what my skills are and what I could bring to the department. If anybody has any questions after this and they want to talk to me about something that they have personal, I'd be more glad to stay around and and you can ask me any questions that you'd like to ask. But I think I've answered the questions satisfactorily, and I would appreciate your votes very much.
Well, this is an important election. Like I said, it's because the Assessor's Office is the backbone to the county government services that are provided and help fund the police and the fire and the schools and the Recorder's Office and all sorts of different departments. The Assessor's Office has a good record, and I admire that. I admire the staff for being very loyal and being very hardworking. For the assessor position, your vote and your support are recognition that you understand the responsibility of finding the most qualified person to perform this specialized job. The compensation paid for the assessor from your tax dollars demands the candidate to be many things. The proven contributor to our communities, a skilled, forward-thinking leader, and a hands-on manager for a highly trained team of professionals. And the assessor needs to be an expert at appraisal and auditing and assessment law. You also need to know that this person demonstrates a level of integrity befitting an office with influence to all the people in the areas of our county. That's what you can expect from me. You'll find more of these details through personal contact with me and through my website and in referrals. I thank you for your support, and I thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum, because obviously the Assessor's Office doesn't get a lot of publicity. A lot of people don't know what we do, and this is the best way to get the information out, and I think it's tremendously beneficial. Thank you.
You may applaud now. I would just like to announce there will be another forum on May 8th for the Congressional Office, also for hopefully the State Senate Office and the State Assembly Office.
Thanks, sir.
So I hope you all can come back and see that forum. And also again on May 14th will be the Supervisors Forum.
What time is it?
They will start at 6 p.m. on May 8th and on May 14th. So it'll be the Board of Supervisors on May 14th.